Welcome to the Quiet Man series, episode 21. In a way, this episode's about walking. It's walking away from things, it's walking towards things, it's walking as a way of alleviating and relieving stress. It seems to be a big theme and context in my life. My relationship, as it was, had come to an end and I had to move somewhere. And I chose to move to Tooting in southwest London. Don't know if you've ever been to Tooting, but there's a street that runs from Tooting Broadway down to Wandsworth called Garrett Lane. There's some real eclectic little shops down there. And I was walking down there one day and I saw a chap with an alligator. And I just laughed. And he looked at me and said, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "Well, I learnt years ago that if you knock on enough doors with an alligator, you'll eventually find somebody who wants to buy it." And there you are walking down the street with an alligator. It just seemed to be one of those little moments that summed up life in sales to me. One of the things you learn when you're walking a lot, knocking on doors, seeing people, going from place to place, business to business, is make sure you got good shoes. And back in the early 90s, it made sense also to make sure that they were shined. Nobody wore trainers that much in those days. And the thing is, that made me stand out because there was this one client that I went to see and he nicknamed me Neil with the shiny shoes. But those shiny shoes ended up getting me a great big fat commercial contract with a big security company. And when I did the stats on it later, because I'd made an impression with the managing director of this business, I positioned myself as somebody that was smart, that shined their own shoes, that was always punctual, was always on time. Gave him an idea that I was somebody that had a sense of discipline and I could teach that to his salespeople. And so we ended up with a big corporate sales gig with this security company. So Neil with the shiny shoes. When I actually went back and looked at my stats for selling, that sales contract was 10 times more effective, 10 times more productive than anything else I'd sold to date. And it made me realise that the art of selling is being in front, having a meeting with the right people. Because that was the managing director of a major PLC, and it's a completely different selling game to go on and talking to smaller business owners. At that point too, I was also starting to do some individual training, which we now call coaching. And one of the people that I was coaching, although the term didn't exist in those days, was a member of the European Parliament. I'm not going to say who it is. I turned around to him and I said, "Come on, what's your goal? What are you looking to achieve here?" And he stood up and he puffed his chest out. He said, "It's to affect legislative change." And I spat my tea out. I said, "You what?" He said, "Yes, to affect legislative change." And I said, "Sit down. Let's bottom that out. Let's make it real. This is why people don't connect with politicians." And so I helped him craft and get his message back to a place of reality. And do you know what his real goal was? To get re-elected. Funny that, isn't it, eh? Politicians. They say kick any stone, you find a politician. Nowadays, kick any stone, you find a coach. A little personal interlude. With all this travelling around, with all this calling on people, I had started to develop quite a nice circle of friends. One of my clients invited me to a boat race party down on the Thames at Barnes. It was a very nice apartment overlooking the river. It was on 3 different levels and I was in the apartment on the 2nd level. Go out to the balcony to look down and there's this absolutely stunning woman looking up at me and she takes a photograph. I wave to her and she waves back. 15 minutes later, there's a knock on the apartment door and she waltzes in. And she said, "Yeah, I've come up to see you." And I went, "That's very nice." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to see that photograph one day." Anyway, long story short, a few weeks later, I got to see the photograph. She wasn't taking a photograph of me. The balcony below was the chap that she was taking the photograph of. And it was Jack Nicholson. So there is a photograph of me and Jack Nicholson, although he's at the party below. But she left the party with him to come up and meet me. That's what I'll take away from that. I'll leave that story there. There might be a thread that will carry through into chapter 22. I'm Not sure if I'm going to share that yet. So, chapter 21, what's this really about? It's actually get the right kit, because walking was a theme that I absolutely fell in love with Snowden and the whole district around Snowden. And when you trek in areas like that, you've got to make sure you got the right kit. So right kit for town, right kit for the countryside. That's the lesson there. The reality, though, is at this point in my life, I really was living on the edge. And there'd be more of that in chapter 22. Funny thing about living on the edge, that's where the energy is. The edge is where the state changes happen, when you go from one state to another, hopefully in an ascending order. If you've liked this chapter, give it a thumbs up. Please comment on it, share it with your friends, and there'll be more tomorrow in chapter 22. Thank you very much.